The Saucony Endorphin Speed 4, the most recent update to one of the most beloved running shoe series in all of running shoes over the past few years, but one that I have largely ignored. But the question here is the Speed 4 good enough to convert even a skeptic like me? It's time. It's time to talk about the Saucony Endorphin series, specifically the Speed 4 in this video. Now, I knew I would eventually have to talk about these shoes on this channel because they are so popular, and it's an obvious gap in this channel if I don't talk about them, especially because the three Endorphins compare to so many other shoes in this space. Now, I do have a bit of a history with Saucony shoes. I outlined sort of my gripes or my beef with Saucony in the previous video on this channel. I'll put a link in the description. But for 2024, I'm moving on and I'm going to start to cover the Endorphin series because I think they're both very important shoes to talk about. Now, I picked up the Speed 4 and the Pro 4. We're reviewing the Speed 4 in this video 2 weeks ago. And in the past 2 weeks, I have put 106.8 kilometers or about 66 miles on my pair of Speed 4s. That tells you two things. Now, on Instagram, I put up a post 2 weeks ago when I purchased them. By the way, if you don't follow me on Instagram, follow the link right here. Talking about I want to be as objective as I can with these shoes. So I'm going to put them through the paces, especially the Speed, because I really wanted to get up to speed with the Speed. No pun intended, because I do have a history specifically with the original Speed, which I didn't like. So 106 kilometers on a pair of shoes over 2 weeks is a lot of running for me in one pair of shoes over that short of period of time. And that tells you two things. I really tried to be as thorough as I can with this review, but also, a bit of a spoiler alert, I really enjoyed running in this shoe. Which is why I put 106.8 kilometers on this shoe, because I enjoyed it so much. I found it very versatile. So, everything isn't perfect with this shoe, and I definitely have some gripes about it. But overall, this has been a very enjoyable getting back up to speed with the Speed. Even though this video is labeled a 50-mile impressions video, it is actually an initial impressions video as well, because this is the first time I'm talking about the Speed or the Speed 4 on this channel. So with that, let's go over the specs of this shoe. According to Running Warehouse, which is where I pull all my specs from, this shoe is 38 mil of foam in the heel with 30 mil in the forefoot, though according to Saucony, it's 36/28. Either one of those gives you an 8 mil drop. Now, again, according to Running Warehouse, this shoe weighs 8.3 ounces or 235 grams for the standard US men's size 9 reference size. Now, for my shoe, which is also a US men's size 9 standard reference size, weighing them, my right one came in at 237 grams and the left one came in at 239 grams. So about 8.4 ounces if you average those. Either way, it's close to the specs coming from Running Warehouse. Starting with the upper on this shoe, I'm going to say almost all of the negative things I have to say about this shoe have to do with the upper and the fit of this shoe. Now, I've watched a bunch of other reviews of this shoe, the Speed 4, and everyone seems to really like this upper, or they like the refinements from the Speed 3. Overall, though, I just think the upper material is very cheap. I think it's very ill-fitting. I think it's baggy in strange places. I think this zonal mesh is kind of a mess overall. It's not very conforming to the foot, and I think a lot of the overlays on this shoe are very oddly chosen, and I think they're very cheap feeling materials. The heel counter in this shoe is oddly straight, and there's very little padding back here, so there isn't much of a pocket for your heel in this shoe. Now, I'm not one who complains about heel lift in shoes. I can't remember the last time I had any heel lift in this shoe, and I'm not going to say that I had heel lift in this shoe, but I was always aware that the heel was very loose on this shoe. Now, the midfoot of this shoe, as I said, and you can even see it right now in this shoe, the upper material is just very baggy. And overall, I'm not getting a good lockdown in the midfoot of this shoe. And in the forefoot, I'm not going to say this is a wide or narrow shoe. I'm not having width issues at all in this shoe, but the volume of this is just very strange. I wouldn't say it's high, but I wouldn't say it's low, but it's just overall, it's just a very vague fitting upper. And it doesn't really work for me, though it hasn't given me any issues either. Another thing that I find very odd about this is the last of this shoe. I think the tapering of the forefoot on the lateral and the medial side is kind of strange. I wish there was a little bit more material, a little bit more foam on the medial side. And in fact, you can kind of see this where the toe, my big toe is like right here. It kind of just sort of spills over a lack of foam right here in the shoe. Again, hasn't caused me any issues. It's just, I shouldn't be doing that. Over here, I just feel like the taper on the lateral side of the shoe is just a little bit too quick. So it does create some pressure points over here, but nothing that's causing any problems. Overall, I just don't like the way this shoe fits, but it hasn't given me problems. And on the run over 100 kilometers now, I've not actually had any problems with it. I just don't like the way this thing fits. Let me give the Saucony engineers a little credit here because I think they did do something really good with this upper, and I think it contributes to the reason why I'm not actually having any run problems with this upper. And that is the gusset in this tongue. Now, most gusseted tongues will be about in this area and they'll anchor into the midfoot. They'll kind of go straight into the midfoot and they're really wrapping around your midfoot to kind of lock your foot in. This gusset in this tongue starts about here, but it actually anchors down into the heel cup almost. The anchor is about right here. I'm looking at it on the other side of the shoe, and it's about right here. So this tongue, when it wraps over your foot and you lock the laces down, is actually locking your foot into this heel cup. And I think that's actually a really smart decision overall with this upper. It's almost like there's an engineer that was on the team for this shoe that understood that overall this upper is very sloppy fitting, so they need to put that gusset anchored into the heel cup area to really give any kind of lockdown in this shoe. And overall, I think it does really well. And I think it specifically does really well for my foot, which is a very kind of high developed arch and a very high volume foot. So that means I'm getting this tongue, which is also a mix of weird mesh, kind of cheap feeling mesh materials, sitting nicely flat on the top of my foot. It's not stretchy. It's probably the only part of this upper that isn't stretchy, which is this tongue. Sits on my foot. I can pull the laces as tight as I can given they're stretchy, but that locks my heel and locks my foot into this upper and overall forces the upper to conform around my foot, which again, I think is the only reason this shoe isn't giving me problems as far as fit. Now, with all that out of the way, everything else I have to say about the shoe is very positive, and a lot of the positive comes from this midsole. Power Run PB. Now, this is not a new foam. It's been in the Endorphin series, both the Speed and the Pro, since the beginning. Now, I did run in the original Endorphin Speed. I didn't think much of the Power Run PB foam back then. But again, I was trying to compare it, I think, to Nike Zoom X. This is not Nike Zoom X. But now, 4 years on, I've run in a lot of other foams, and I kind of realize how good this foam is now. And it's taken that many years. And this foam is very good, and I think it's very well applied to a tempo trainer, all-around trainer, super trainer, whatever you want to call this shoe. But I think Power Run PB and the qualities of Power Run PB are exactly the right choice for a shoe like this. Now, this midsole is a two-piece midsole. You can clearly see that. The navy piece of foam is the upper piece. The white piece is the lower piece, and what they're sandwiching is a nylon plate. Now, that nylon plate is also part of what makes this shoe work so well. It is probably the most flexible plate I've ever felt in a running shoe. Any running shoe I've ever run in that's been plated, this is the most flexible plate I've ever felt. And it's shocking just how flexible this is. It's almost like it's not even there, though on the run, which I'll talk about in a bit, you definitely are aware there is a plate in this shoe. Now, I would call this a low plate configuration, meaning the plate comes very low to the ground in the forefoot, curls up into a toe spring, and it starts high in the heel. You can also see that on the lateral and the medial side, there's these wings right here. That's this color right here. So these are actually kind of wings that come off the plate that help to stabilize the shoe. And I think they work really well for heel striking and midfoot striking. For forefoot striking, you don't really notice it, but I'll talk more about that in the run section of this video. Now moving to the outsole of this shoe, I like shoes that have one piece of rubber in the forefoot. And I think this one's really well designed. It's a lattice structure with cutouts between the lattices, which I think give this shoe some compliance to the ground. Now you have 30 mils of foam in the shoe, you have a plate in the shoe, even though it's a flexible plate, you're not getting a lot of ground feel in this shoe, but you are getting nice compliance. You're getting good grip in this shoe. And I think this is a very smartly designed forefoot piece of rubber. In the heel, we have the two sort of pads on the medial and the lateral side. I'm not really noticing them because I'm a forefoot striker, and overall the Power Run PB is wearing very well after 100 kilometers. But I would expect that because the beaded foam, Pebax foam of Power Run PB was chosen 4 years ago for the original Speed to be very durable. So we have seen how durable Power Run PB is, and I expect to get a lot of use out of this foam. So what is it like to run in this shoe? As harsh as I've been on this upper and the fit of the shoe and saying it doesn't feel like a premium performance trainer on foot, I'm going to say the run performance of this shoe definitely feels like a premium performance trainer. Probably one of the best ones I'm running in some time. And that performance is really coming from the interplay of two things, the Power Run PB foam and this beautiful nylon plate that's in this shoe. Now starting with Power Run PB, I actually think it's probably the best mix of qualities for a foam for a shoe like this. So if we look at this matrix, and I've shown this on this channel before, you can see Nike Zoom X and Lightstrike Pro, Lightstrike Pro Evo, the new Asics FF Turbo Plus, FF Turbo, the older version. I would put Saucony's Power Run PB about here. Now, this I think is the appropriate place for this foam. It's not too soft. Power Run PB is not a foam that you sink into. It definitely does not feel like it's wrapping around your foot like Zoom X does, but it is a foam that you feel the compression in. So it's soft enough where you feel it compress under your foot, but again, you don't sink into it. And the resiliency is somewhere in the middle. It's not too high up on the scale, so it doesn't feel like it's going all over the place and a lot to handle, but it's also not low where it's just going to feel dead. So I think that spot for Power Run PB is kind of perfect. Now the second piece of technology in this midsole that makes this midsole ride so well is this plate. Now, if we look at the configuration of the plate, and I've showed this in my History of Endorphin video, which I'll put a link in the description, but the Saucony Endorphin Speed and Pro plate is essentially the same geometry. But if we compare that to the Nike Vaporfly plate, and again, these are both low plate configuration shoes, you can see they both start high in the heel, they dip in the midfoot, though the Saucony plate doesn't dip quite as much as the Nike plate does, and I've talked about why in numerous videos. But the difference between the Saucony and the Nike plate is that, as you can see in the Nike plate, if you draw a straight line from the flat part of the heel, the rocker or the toe spring in it doesn't come up much higher than the flat part of the heel. But in the Saucony plate, we actually get a lot of toe spring that comes up quite a bit higher over the flat part of the heel, and that really adds to the ride of the shoe. So again, in the Nike Vaporfly, you're getting the flex and sort of the energy return of the plate propelling you forward kind of evenly out of the midfoot and off of the toe spring. Whereas in the Saucony Endorphin Speed and Pro plate, again, similar geometries between those two plates, you're getting a little bit of that kind of push out of the midfoot, but you're getting a lot of that spring off the toe spring because it's so exaggerated. And that really is the essence of the Speed Roll technology in this shoe. And the way Power Run PB and this beautiful flexible nylon plate work together really make this shoe run in a very unique way, which makes it so versatile. Now, there is toe rocker in this shoe, but this is not a shoe that feels like you're falling forward. There's no extreme sort of falling off a cliff forward feeling in this shoe, though there is a smooth roll off the toe. I would call the forefoot of the shoe actually very neutral, and a lot of that is the flexibility of the materials and the plate in this shoe. But what actually is happening in the shoe, and I'm going to go over the forefoot strike in this shoe first because I'm a forefoot striker, is when I'm landing in this shoe, I'm compressing this white layer of Power Run PB, the layer of foam that's under the plate. I can feel that initial softness. I can feel the softness of Power MPB. I feel the compression, but then I can feel the plate sort of engage. So when this white foam compresses enough where now the plate is basically on the ground, that stiffens up or firms up the feel of the shoe. Now, people have described this shoe to run a little bit firmer than maybe the previous generations. I don't think it's the foam. I think it's the way the plate is engaging to the ground. And I think if this shoe did not have the plate, it would just be way too soft. So that soft Power MPB under the plate compresses. The plate's now on the ground, and then the navy blue foam that's above the plate now compresses under my foot, so I still continue that soft sensation as this shoe's now rolling me forward, because now I've engaged this plate. Now that extreme toe spring in this plate is really trying to roll me or pitch me forward in a really neutral, smooth way. This is a very smooth toe off that doesn't get in the way. Even though there is a lot of toe spring in the plate and there is toe rocker in the shoe, it never feels like it's getting in the way. It feels very neutral. Now, as a heel striker, you're compressing the foam, and given this is a Saucony shoe, there's a lot of sort of stability elements designed into this midsole. Now, this is a very neutral shoe, but Saucony likes to put some mild stability elements in their shoes, especially for midfoot and heel striking, and this shoe's no different. We have a very wide medial and lateral heel flare in this shoe, which is there to capture the foot for the heel strike. We have a wide midfoot with a lot of foam here. There's no real cutouts in here. There is a cutout in the middle of the foot, but on the rails of the midsole of this shoe, you're not getting a lot of material cut out here. So it's a very stable midfoot. So for a heel striker landing in the shoe, whether you're pronating or supinating, you're landing, this shoe's trying to like absorb that initial impact. It's trying to move you into the midfoot. That's where the plates, the wings of this plate really come in, because now what that's doing is the heels capture your foot, the wings are trying to center your foot, and all of that's to try to engage the forefoot of this to really get most of the impact of the nice plate in the midfoot to compress to the ground evenly. So again, just like me as a forefoot striker, I'm compressing the foam. The plate then engages, firms up the ride. I'm getting the continued compression of the foam above the plate, and it's rolling me forward. It's a really beautiful feeling, and it never gets in the way. Now, I've run this shoe through every pace. Easy pace, recovery pace, all the way up to 5K pace, and I've not found any pace where this shoe doesn't perform, or the mechanics of this midsole don't get in the way, or it just always will work for you. A lot of plated shoes or a lot of heavily rockered or toe spring shoes tend to really feel like they're getting in the way, like they can't keep up with my cadence, and I'm a high cadence runner. This shoe's not the case, and I think a lot of that is the flexibility. This shoe keeps up with me no matter what I'm running in, no matter what my cadence is. Now, easy running, I'm usually running around 180 steps per minute. When I'm going 5K or above, I'm sometimes in the 190s, even the 200s. This shoe's never getting in the way. And on the other end of that, for really easy recovery runs, this shoe's just soft. It absorbs. The amount of force that I'm putting into the ground through the foam is altering how the plate's engaging. So if I'm running really slow, easy paces, I'm not getting as much firmness in the way this shoe feels as I am when I'm really pushing into the ground, like 5K and beyond pace. And that's where the plate, the flexible plate, really comes in, and it's really saving this very soft foam. So it's a really nice mix of a soft, mid-level resilient foam with a wonderful plate design and a lot of great engineering that just make this shoe very versatile and work pretty much for everything. Another way of summarizing this review is that this is just a very easy shoe to put on and go run. Tim Gross has told me multiple times about this shoe, that it's just a shoe that he can put on and feel like he's getting a workout or an easy run or just really any type of run in this shoe, and he doesn't really need to worry about it. It just works for everything. And I agree with him. I really kind of understand that now. I didn't really get it until I spent so much time in this shoe. This is a shoe I can just put on and go out for a run and let my legs kind of dictate what that run's going to be. Since I'm not training for anything in particular right now, a lot of my running is just kind of running to run. I am trying to hit certain paces. I am trying to do some workouts here and there. But generally, I go out and run by effort. And, if I'm going out and I feel good that day, I'm going to pick it up a bit. If I'm not feeling particularly great, I'm going to, lay back a little bit. And I've found that this is a shoe that I don't really need to think about that. If I go out and I feel really great that day, I can pick it up and I'm going to have a great run. If I'm feeling a little slower that day and I just want to take it easy, I can also take it very easy. I don't really need to plan my run. I don't need to kind of pick the right shoe for how I feel that day before I even go out. I can just put this on and go. And I think that speaks a lot to the versatility and just the usability of this overall shoe. And lastly, I think the best compliment I can give to this shoe is that I think I'm going to probably run in this shoe enough that I'm going to need to buy a second pair. Now, that rarely happens with me. In fact, last year in 2023, the only two shoes I bought multiple pairs of were the Nike Pegasus 40 and the Nike Vaporfly 3. I didn't buy a second pair really of anything else last year, but this is a shoe I can see myself reaching for enough that I'm definitely going to end up buying a second pair of these. And I think that's probably the best compliment I can give this shoe and the best summary to this review. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you find this content useful, consider subscribing. You'll see more content from me pop up in your feed. If not, drop a like on this video because it helps this channel continue to grow, which I always appreciate. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one.